Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Hersey.
And Jim, last week, we actually kind of left the show with a bit of a cliffhanger with the Ninja Turtles at Universal Studios Hollywood. So I was listening into this week's Disney Unpacked, and it looks like you actually have an answer.
Yes, yeah. But before we share what got uncovered, let's first thank our sponsor, which, of course, the Epic Universal Podcast is sponsored by TouringPlans.com. Touring Plans help you save time and money in theme parks like, well, Universal and the Walt Disney World. So please check them out at TouringPlans.com. Okay, now back to the Ninja Turtles at Universal Hollywood. And again, just to sort of recap here, when we did the initial story, we had nice folks like BioReconstruct, a friend of the show, reach out and talk about how he had seen not just the Ninja Turtles at Universal, but he'd done a meet and greet with them. Did you hear about this?
Right, the one like a sewer kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, now what's kind of interesting about this is that the Ninja Turtle, where this all came from, was a touring show, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of Their Shell. This is actually an arena show. It started out Radio City Music Hall in September of 1990 and ran for a full year across the country. In fact, kind of interesting, starts in New York State, ends in New York State. They ended their run in September of 1991. In Saratoga, New York, at the Saratoga Springs Performing Arts Center. But early on in the tour, they did a 4-day stint at the Universal Amphitheater at Universal Studios Hollywood. And again, BioReconstruct mentioned that he did the meet and greet for this thing. And what he described was that you were on the upper lot and you actually went down one floor. I guess I should explain here that in April of 1988, Universal built a 7-story tall, 2,850 car parking garage into the hillside.
Oh.
And so, in fact, it's there even today. It's called the Frankenstein Garage. And evidently what they did is, because the way they built it into the hillside, Eric, they got 3.5 additional acres to build on. In fact, this is where they built the Terminator 3D attraction, which is now the Despicable Me thing out in Hollywood. And Super Silly Funland is on top of this building as well. But anyway, back then, evidently what they did is that while the Ninja Turtles were performing at Universal, they then, at the amphitheater, evidently during the day, during the time they were in town, they did this special meet and greet, and they created the space on the topmost floor of the parking structure. So basically what they convince people is, you're going down into the sewers. Well, no, you're going down to the first level of the parking garage, but that's a really industrial looking space that would have been,
I can see it.
Yeah, easy to redress as a sewer. And here were the performers in the outfit from the touring show. And so, you got your picture taken, you got to sign an autograph. And by the way, I guess a couple of things, other thing just to mention here quick. This tour made stops at other theme parks around the country. In fact, from May of 1991 through, when is that? Through August of that same year. They did stops at Six Flags Over Georgia, Carowinds, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Great Adventure, Great America, Astroworld, and then the original Six Flags Over Texas, and finally Six Flags over Mid-America. And also, if you want additional information about this, I've been told that the guys over at Podcast The Ride did a show about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles out of the shell thing. But that, Eric, just before we recorded here tonight, I took a look over there, and evident these guys are the podcast the ride guys are kind of obsessed with the out of the shell tour, because I found 3 separate shows that the
Oh,
that these guys have done about this topic for May 2019 through just December of last year, 2023, and they always do a nice job over there. So
right.
if you want to do an even deeper dive on the Ninja Turtles at Universal, or the out of their shell tour, head on over to Podcast The Ride.
Man, nah, I'll have to do that. I mean, I'm not sure how interested I am to listen to 3 full episodes, but I'm sure they make it interesting.
This is true.
But
this
no,
is
I think
true.
the listeners did come through with that one.
Oh, no,
but you were
no.
speaking of Bio-Reconstruct earlier, so let me ask you this, Jim.
Mhm.
Did you see the latest drop of photo updates for Epic Universe that he just dropped recently?
I saw that this is a crazy big pile this time around. What is it? 250 over 250 images in the last week?
Right. Yeah. And I think so. I was going through, and it's impossible for me to go through Twitter and not see a Bio-Reconstruct. He does a very good job, and I always stop and look and so forth. But one of my favorite threads is there's actually one that started up, I think it was September, maybe a 22, where it's a thread where you click on it and it's just dirt, right? It's just the oversight. But as you scroll down, you start getting the actual buildings coming up from the ground. So yeah, I mean, it's quite a he's really being the historian of this progress. I mean, we don't have that kind of information readily available for a lot of the other theme parks, but you could see it really month by month progress being made.
No, I love this level of documentation.
If you also saw, I not only that, just recently he was updating. There were some pictures of the hurricane prep. Because Milton is, I mean, as we speak right now, it's almost landfall, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
In fact, just to clarify here, folks, Eric and I are recording on Wednesday, October 9th, and literally the ABC Evening News just finished running here at the house, and the latest info in regard to Hurricane Milton, originally thought to be a Category 4 with sustained winds of 130 miles an hour, but as of 6 o'clock tonight, evidently it's weakened to a Category 3, so we're down to just 120 mile an hour winds, and
it's been everywhere, Jim. I mean, we've seen it as much as Category 5. I saw one article that was like, it's going to be a Category 6, which I don't think exists. And they were saying 200 miles per hour. So that's good that it's been downgraded. We don't know what it's going to hit.
Well, as of right now, the again, there's always that term, the cone of uncertainty. It looks like at this point, landfall will be over Sarasota, which is between Tampa and Fort Myers on Florida's Gulf Coast. And you mentioned Bio-Reconstruct covered, the prep that Universal has been making out ahead of Hurricane Milton. Now, the Universal Orlando closed Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure, and City Walk as of 2 p.m. today. And the parks will remain closed through all of Thursday, October 10th. Also worth noting, they canceled the Halloween Horror Nights, and the water park has been closed. And mind you, the hotels will remain operational because obviously there's so many people who've flown into town and are staying in these places. And the folks at Universal talked about how they are focusing right now on taking care of their guests on property. Going forward here, Universal says it plans to reopen on Friday, October 11th, pending the outcome of the storm impacts. Now, I bring that up, Eric, because do you remember Hurricane Ian at all? This is the one made landfall at Fort Myers, and that horrific storm surge there. It hit Central Florida on September 28th of 2022, and again, not a Category 3. There were 96-mile-an-hour winds recorded at New Smyrna Beach, but on the other hand, 14 inches of rain fell.
Right.
All
Wow.
right. And as a direct result, walkways and roads all over the Universal Orlando resort were flooded. And um, not that hurricanes are ever funny, but what was slightly amusing about the aftermath of Hurricane Ian is, did you ever see the photo of the Jurassic River Adventure attraction at Islands sustained damage to the side of its show box? They actually,
Oh, I do. Yes,
yeah,
I do remember that. Yes.
okay,
I mean,
okay.
I wasn't in the Universal bubble at that point in time, but that did carry over into my Disney realm. I did see that. Yeah.
Well, but it just and an image got posted. I want to say it's somebody who stayed at Cabana Bay who was able to get a picture of it, and then immediately post. It's like, oh no, it's like the original Jurassic Park movie. There was a horrible storm, and now there's a hole, and the dinosaurs can get out. So that would mildly amusing, but. Interesting note though, because again, so much rain fell during that storm. What's kind of interesting is I was just checking at the City of Orlando site, and out ahead of this storm, to make sure that they don't experience that sort of flooding, they talk about how city crews are actually going around lowering the water levels of several
Oh,
lakes throughout the city. And what they're looking to do out ahead of what they anticipate is going to be a record rainfall is, I guess they've been doing it for 2 days now, but they've lowered some of these waterways by as much as 8 to 12 inches. So I wonder. In fact, it'll be interesting to go through BioReconstruct's photos and see if maybe they're doing the same thing over at the Universal Orlando Resort to avoid what happened the last time. Because again,
right.
with that 14 inches of rain, think about it, that canal system that runs throughout the whole
Oh,
Universal
yeah.
Resort, and there's that scenic walkway that was right next to it that, the very next morning had 8 inches of water in it. And it's like, well, nobody can walk to the parks, which aren't open anyway, but you get the idea.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, there's going to be a lot of people still there, then, and they're going to need to move around. So it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see how it hits. I mean, when I was looking up yesterday, just in
Hmm.
general, they said there's never really been a Category 2 that's hit Orlando, and I
Hmm.
hope it usually slows down as it gets inward. Correct?
It does. But the downside of it slowing, and again, just as we talked about with Hurricane Ian, is that you then get these horrific rain events that just
Yeah,
rain and rain and rain and rain.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if we've seen a hurricane come through with such
Mm.
an active construction zone either. Like, how
Yeah.
I would really be interested to see what the heck's going on at the actual epic construction zone.
Well,
How do
no,
you?
it's so interesting you bring that up because I remember when they were taking me through the construction site of Diagon Alley. And they were talking about, oh, we're getting ready for a hurricane test. And it's like,
Hmm.
your hurricane test? And it says, yeah. And they explained that what they do is they come in with this high pressure, for lack of a better term, cannon. And what they do is they fire a full size 2x4 into the side of the building with the idea that if they've done their job right, and again, they dialed this thing up to a Category 5 with the notion of, if a piece of wood is flying at 300 miles an hour into the side of the building, will it hold? And so it was fascinating that they build these things with an eye toward, yeah, we're in Florida,
Yeah.
that hurricanes happen here. So
Right. Well, let's just hope that everybody is safe, and by the time you're
yes,
listening to this, it's
yes.
all said and gone, and
Mhm.
no damage being done, and in Jurassic Park, the sides all in kept. but but I would say let's hope everybody is safe, and we're thinking essentially about everybody out there that's prepping right now as we speak. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, we hope when the show goes live on Friday that that there's been as little as possible damage, and that just everybody's safe.
right. Well, Jim, why don't we take a break, and when we get back, we'll talk about a little bit of chocolate.
There we go. Okay, and we're back. So, Eric, last week we talked about your family's trip to Hershey, Pennsylvania, but you had a few Universal related questions that came out of that trip.
Well, yeah, Jim. Actually, so we were walking around Chocolate World. So
Hmm.
that's it's kind of adjacent to the theme park,
Hmm.
and it has like the interactive experiences and a nice little tour of the factory and so forth. And
Hmm.
I noticed a rather large display for Harry Potter right in the actual Hershey, right next to the Reese's Pants and the Kit Kat football.
Hmm.
There was this giant Harry Potter display, and
Hmm.
they were selling shirts and socks and scarves. And sure enough, there was actually Harry Potter themed chocolate bars. So I was curious, Jim, did you know about this?
I did. In fact, if you head over to the Hersheyland website, there's this entire section dedicated to, for lack of a better term, the partnership. You can find snack-sized chocolate bars with the different house names, along with kisses with with 21 different foils, and then what 12 different full-size chocolate bars, all with different designs.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of those.
Hmm.
They were actually on display, and I was just going on. But I wondered, when did actually this partnership with Universal start?
Well, okay, now just to be clear here, Harry Potter is not really Universal. Universal license the theme park rights to Potter from Warner Brothers, and in fact, it's Warner Brothers who formed this partnership with Hersey uh, back in August of last year, 2023.
Ah, okay. So I'm guessing. So this is just like a common case of frequency illusion for me. So right. So
Yeah,
it's
okay.
quite funny how more and more I notice Universal properties and like
Hmm.
IP and whether it be Warner Brother properties in real life ever since we started recording this show.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and since we're now talking about chocolate and partnerships and IP, let's now talk about one of the more interesting locations you will find at well now it's in Universal Orlando, it's in Hollywood, and it's also in Beijing. This is the Toothsome Chocolate Emporium and Savory Feast Kitchen.
Oh, very well done, Jim. Let me see if I can one up you and
Mhm.
introduce you to the founder, Professor Dr. Penelope Thibaut Tinker Toothsome, and of course, her sidekick Jacques. But Jim, I have questions. I have questions about all of this.
Well, then where shall we start? Again, we talked about how the first of the Toothsome Chocolate Emporiums, the Savory Feast Kitchen, that one opened at City Walk in Universal Orlando back in September of 2016. And interestingly enough, you mentioned Harry Potter and Hershey at the top. How this project got started can be tied back to the original Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Hogsmeade Village, which opened at Isles of Adventure in June of 2010. And now, did you and the family, when you were in the park, did you get into the Three Broomsticks?
We did. That was a good one.
Okay, yeah, because again, heavily themed setting where you can dine on authentic English cuisine. And in fact, the crazy level of detail in that restaurant. If you're sitting in there and it's quiet enough, that they've built a sound profile, Eric, where you can actually hear people walking around upstairs, moving from room to room. The notion of you may not see them, but there are people upstairs in the rooms at this place. So
Well, next time I'm there, I'm going to stand up on a table and just tell everybody to be quiet, and we'll see how that goes.
okay, all right. So anyway, the restaurant, and again, that just created a setting straight out of the Harry Potter books and films. Yeah, and the success of that first Harry Potter land, of course, led to Diagon Alley, which opens July of 2014, which again features the Leaky Cauldron. And I know from the last show when we talked about
Right.
it, you guys definitely did the Leaky Cauldron. Uh,
Absolutely.
okay, so another highly themed eatery that puts Potter fans right in the restaurant that they knew and loved from J.K. Rowling's 7 novels and the 8 Warner Brother films. But in between that, Eric, we got Fast Food Boulevard, which is actually on the other side of Florida Lagoon, across the way from Diagon Alley. That opened in June of 2013, and this was an expansion of the area immediately around the Simpsons ride, where you could then now eat at well-known eateries straight out of that long-running animated series, like Krusty Burger and the Frying Dutchman and Cletus's Chicken Shack, and of course Moe's Tavern, where I know you talked about. I think Lauren brought you a Duff, right?
Right.
Okay.
I think it was a Duff. We're not sure what it was. It was a
Okay.
can. It said Duff. It tasted odd. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But this is Universal Creative doing exactly what they did with Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade Village. That they're faithfully recreating the world that Simpson fans would already knew so well, and then giving them opportunity to enjoy famous foods from that TV show, like a Krusty Burger or a Flaming Moe. Now, this concept of recreating with great detail, with great attention to detail, they did a specific world of a well-known film and a television show, and then doubling down by building a restaurant within these spaces that then served food that had all this authenticity, was something that Universal Creative is now really invested in and committed to. And by the way, that effort continues even today. I mean, you just look at Illumination Avenue at Studios Florida, which opened in August of last year. We got Minion Land with the Minion Cafe, where you can get unicorn cupcakes and banana flavored cotton candy.
And when we had that too, Jim. So we're going all across. That was
There
a
we
wonderful
go.
experience. Yeah.
Cool. All right, but here's the interesting thing, Eric. Universal Creative then wondered, we know these things work inside of our theme parks, but what about out in City Walk? Which, by the way, remember, starting back in 2013, had undergone a pretty aggressive reimagining. There was a 2-year-long project that saw the openings of multiple new eateries, like the NBC Sports Grill and Brew, Antojito's authentic Mexican food, Vivo Italian Kitchen, and the Red Oven Pizza Bakery. And these had all done well, Eric. But even so, the folks at Universal Creative, it's like, would something on the size and the scale of a Leaky Cauldron or a Krusty Burger do well out in City Walk? I mean, how would the guests respond if they were given the opportunity to step through the front door of a place that they knew from a famous TV show or film out in City Walk, and then have a meal that was authentic to that world? And I mention this because as part of that redo of City Walk, NBA City, which, by the way, had been an opening day attraction at Universal Orlando's version of City Walk. It came online as part of that 30-acre shopping, dining, entertainment district back in May of '99. That NBA City was looking to close. By the way, the closure wouldn't officially be announced till January of 2015, and the store itself wouldn't close till August of that same year, 2015.
Jim. So NBA City, so that closed, and not so long after they actually opened up the NBA Experience or whatever in Disney Springs, kind of, right? That didn't last very long. But were they coincided? Were they like kind of one said, "Hey, we're leaving here. We're going to switch teams, so to speak"? Did they get traded? That's the question.
Well, it's an interesting story. In fact, and I'm not going to lie here, NBA City had some issues, and they actually had a lot to do with the location of the restaurant. Excuse me, the shop. Because, well, you know the layout of City Walk. You know how,
right?
Now, mind you, you guys stayed on property, so you never did the come in through the parking garage and then come down the hill, and then you make the decision at the sort of an intersection. Do I go to the left,
right,
to go over to Island Adventure, or do I go to the right and walk down a ways and get into Studios Florida? But, in front of you is a dock where you can get on boats that will now take you out to the Portofino or out as far as the Royal Pacific or Sapphire Falls. But the thing of it is that the NBA City was on the other side of this canal. And what Universal found out the hard way was that we theme park goers, it's one of these things where it's like, I just walked all the way. I parked my car in the parking garage and I walked down the hill, and it's like, oh, NBA City is, I got to walk over there. I got to keep walking, but I got to get past this canal. And then I decide when I get to the entrance of the studios or get to the entrance of Islands, I got to walk some more. And because it was right in the middle between the two parks, and it never got the foot traffic that they thought it would, because I'm going to say this is a lazy white fat man. It's like, you're going to make me walk further? Oh, no, I don't.
Right.
I don't
You got to
like.
be something real special.
Well,
right.
Now that's the interesting part of this story, because they thought, okay, what if that we need it's Disney parlance, but we need a weenie. We need to give people, when they come down into City Walk and they look across that canal and they see something over there that is so tempting that, oh, I have to go over there. Doesn't that look amazing? That looks cool. Let's go there. And a giant basketball player and didn't do it.
Right.
But a smokestack, or two smokestacks with a very familiar name on it. That was what they thought might seal the deal. But here's the thing, Eric. The name initially on those smokestacks was not Toothsomes. It was Wonka.
No, that was my question when we stepped in there. I said, is this inspired, or is this supposed to be? That's okay. Continue.
Well, this is the thing. Okay, that I think about it. Warner Brothers had made a Willy Wonka film. July of 2005, they had made Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This is the version that was directed by Tim Burton and starred Johnny Depp. But before that, there was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory that was released in theaters June of 1971. And that was produced by the Wappler Company, but it was also released by Paramount Pictures. And here was Universal Creative. It's like, all right, well, look, we have a good working relationship with the folks at Warner Brothers. And why don't we have a conversation about Willy Wonka? And you also have to understand that this working relationship with Warner Brothers had just gotten stronger over the years. What with the July 2014 opening of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios Japan, not to mention the Hollywood version of Hogsmeade Village, which opened in April of 2016. So the thinking was, well, Warner Brothers made the dark, weird version of Willy Wonka, but maybe we could still make this work. But here's the thing: they approach Warner Brothers about, well, can we get the theme park rights to this property? And Warner Brothers is like, it's complicated, and it's like, well, what do you mean it's complicated? And it's like, well, all right, let me explain. There's this new stage version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that debuted in London in June of 2013, had been very successful, Eric. It ran for 3.5 years in the West End at the theater Royal Drury Lane. And so now a Broadway version of that show is being readied. And so evidently, because certain promises had been made about, have the exclusive on this material, especially for the East Coast, it was...
Oh, man. What could have been?
Well, now, but here's the thing. Over the past 5 years, every time somebody's told me this story, it's like, wait a minute, it's a Broadway show. Why would that impact whether or not the theme park rights are available for Willy Wonka? And by the way, the Broadway version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory doesn't open till April of 2017, is not successful, only runs for like 9 months at the L'Enfontaine Theater. And mind you, that version's gone on to be very popular with high schools and community theaters. But okay, but here's the thing. You have theme park rights to Wonka, not available. But you still have this building across the way that Universal really thinks that a chocolate factory is going to convince people to walk around that canal and go over there. So at this point, they're like, all right, forget about Willy Wonka. We're just going to build this, and we're going to come up with our own characters who own and operate this factory. And on next week's show, folks, we're going to talk about, well, again, I'm going to see if I can do what Eric did. I'm going to get these names right. Again, we're going to talk about these two characters that, by the way, your wife Lauren evidently had a wonderful interaction with, and they were Professor Dr. Penelope Thibault Tinker Toothsome, and again, her robotic sidekick, Jacques. So, and again, as part of the conclusion of this story, we'll also talk about how the Savory Feast Kitchen eventually got replicated in Beijing and in Hollywood. And we'll also talk about what the folks at Universal Creative did to make this steampunk-inspired eatery both a memorable place to visit and shop, and as well as a fun place to eat.
Yeah, Jim, I did not even think that this was actually created by the team at Universal. I thought it was a, third-party restaurant chain, something like that. To think that they're like, hey, we're in the restaurant business and we're creating this, that is kind of genius, and I'm excited. Now, I looked into some of the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I heard it firsthand from Penelope herself. So it'll be interesting to see how this story continues on.
And I fully anticipate this is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja 2, in that I would imagine there's a lot of folks who know about the Wonka negotiation who are now going to reach out with additional info. So look for more stories about that too, folks.
Right. And if you have those stories, send them directly to me. I'm at Eric Hersey on Instagram or X. Or you can send them to Jim. Where can they send stories to you, Jim?
Well, as always, you can follow me on X and Instagram at Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. But send your info there, folks, and we will share it here. But okay, that's going to wrap it up for this week's Epic Universal podcast. Again, Eric and I send our heartfelt hopes to all the folks down in Florida, and hope that Hurricane Milton turns out to be relatively mild hurricane-wise. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. And thanks for listening, and stick around for what's coming up this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa. For animation and movie news, please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about our podcast and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.